He expected a knife. The chief offered water, and a question he couldn't answer. Captain Ryan Holt sat in the cockpit of the human shuttle, staring at the planet below. It glowed with pale green light, strange and beautiful, the rivers like molten emerald flowing between crystal towers that reached toward the sky. He had visited dangerous worlds before, fought hostile species, and negotiated with civilizations that saw humans as weak. But this planet, Zarak Prime, felt different. Zarak tribe, the dominant species on this world, was feared across the galaxy. Stories from previous explorers told of warriors who could sense fear, strike without warning, and eliminate threats in a blink. Rian had trained for months, imagining the Zarak as killers who would greet him with knives and hostility. His body tensed as the shuttle touched down, the engines humming softly against the alien terrain. Ryan stepped out first, his boots crunching on the glassy surface. The air was thin but breathable, with a faint metallic scent. Around him, the Zarak village shimmered under the light of twin suns, towers of crystal and stone forming a natural fortress. The architecture was alive, like the planet itself had grown it, not built by hands. From the village center, a figure approached. Tall and elegant, clad in robes of shifting colors that reflected light, the Zarak chief walked slowly. His skin was smooth and pale blue, eyes like liquid silver, and he carried no weapon, not even a knife. Rian's fingers itched towards his sidearm, but his training told him to wait. "Captain Holt," the chief said, his voice calm and clear. It carried no threat, only curiosity. "I am Aelthar." Ryan nodded, swallowing hard. "Chief Aelthar. I am here to discuss relations." Words felt strange on his tongue. He had expected threats, not polite introductions. Aelthar inclined his head and gestured to a structure behind him. It was a hall, carved from the largest crystal tower in the village. Inside, the walls shimmered with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The floor was smooth, reflecting the two suns outside. Water flowed in channels along the walls, sparkling, alive, as if it had a mind of its own. "You will have water," Aelthar said, gesturing toward a shallow basin, "and a question. One that you may not be able to answer." Rian's throat went dry. A question? He had trained for combat, for threats, for negotiating with alien leaders who spoke in harsh tones.
"But a question? This was unexpected."
He forced himself to walk forward, keeping his posture steady. As he approached, he saw the water glint in the light. It was clear, but inside it seemed to move, forming tiny patterns, like ripples, that carried meaning. Rian knelt and drank, feeling cool liquid slide down his throat. The Zarak observed silently, their eyes reflecting the flowing water. "Captain," Aelthar said softly, "why do humans fight when they have wisdom?" The words struck Rian harder than any weapon could. He froze. Wisdom. Fight. He had no ready answer. Every instinct in him screamed to deflect, to joke, or to say something clever. But he knew Aelthar could see through any pretense. I don't know," Rian admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Honesty felt like a weaponless surrender, but it was the only choice. Aelthar nodded slowly. "Good. Most humans would attempt to lie or distract. You speak truth, even if it feels dangerous." Lieutenant Mira Chen, Rian's second-in-command, scanned the village with a mix of awe and skepticism. "Sir, are you sure this is safe?" she whispered. Her hand hovered near her sidearm. "It's safe if we respect them," Rian replied. "Remember, we are guests. Weapons are for defense only. And right now, words are our shield." The villagers began to appear, silently observing the human team. They were unlike any species Rian had ever encountered, tall, thin, and graceful, with an air of serenity that seemed almost unnatural. Their eyes reflected intelligence and patience, not aggression. Yet Rian sensed a quiet power beneath the calm. They did not need weapons to command respect. As the humans walked toward the ceremonial hall, Rian noticed subtle signs of Zarak culture. Patterns etched in the crystal walls seemed to tell stories, not written in letters, but in shapes and lines. The water channels moved in time with the stories, creating images that shifted and flowed. It was mesmerizing, and Rian felt a strange sense of humility. Humans had conquered worlds with strength, but here they were the weaker species. Not in body, but in understanding. Inside the hall, Aelthar gestured for the humans to sit on cushions that hovered slightly above the ground. The room was silent except for the soft hum of crystal vibrations. You expect a knife, Aelthar said, eyes scanning Rian's face. You prepare for ambush. You are trained to respond to attack. But humans have arrived at my world with weapons and shields, yet you have not drawn them. Rian swallowed. We were prepared for anything, he admitted. But your approach? It's unexpected. That is my intention, Aelthar replied. The mind of a warrior is limited when faced only with weapons. The mind of a thinker is open when faced with choice. Rian felt his mind stretch uncomfortably. A challenge, not of combat, but of understanding. He glanced at Mira, who raised an eyebrow, clearly struggling with the same tension. They had been trained to fight, not to meditate over philosophy. Aelthar poured more water into the basin in front of Rian. The ripples formed shapes again, tall towers, flowing rivers, humans walking among them, small and fragile, yet moving with purpose. Rian noticed that the water reflected not just his body, but his thoughts. Each ripple seemed to respond to him. You humans have learned much, Aelthar continued, yet you continue to fight.
Why?
You have logic, creativity, and memory. You have the ability to reflect, but often you choose to destroy first and understand later. Why is this so? Rian felt a bead of sweat on his forehead. The answer was not simple. He thought of wars, across galaxies, of planets humans had conquered, and conflicts they had started, and yet he also thought of human resilience, compassion, and the rare ability to choose kindness even in dangerous circumstances. I don't have a simple answer, he said. Humans fight because we fear, because we survive, but also, sometimes, because we hope. We hope that through conflict we can protect, we can learn, we can grow. Aelthar studied him, silent, letting the words hang. Then he smiled slightly, not with mockery, but with acknowledgement. Perhaps, the chief said, you begin to understand. Survival without reflection is empty. Strength without wisdom is hollow. You have shown me your mind, Captain Holt. That is more valuable than any weapon you carry. Rian exhaled slowly, feeling a tension ease from his shoulders. He realized that the test had just begun. This was only the first step in a journey that would challenge not just his skills, but his very understanding of what it meant to be human. The other humans looked uncertain. Mira whispered, Sir, they're not like any aliens we've dealt with. What do we do next? Rian glanced around the hall, at the glowing water, the calm villagers, and Aelthar's serene presence. We observe, we learn, and we answer, not with weapons, but with thought. That is how we survive here. The ceremonial hall seemed to pulse softly, as if acknowledging his words. The crystal walls shimmered with a light that reflected the human team's presence, casting patterns that danced across the floor. The aliens were not hostile, but every gesture, every word seemed deliberate, as if they were reading the humans as easily as pages of a book. As the humans settled, Rian felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. He had faced dangers in countless battles, yet this test of mind and spirit felt far more difficult. And he understood deep in his bones that the journey ahead would demand not just courage, but wisdom. He took another sip of water, feeling its clarity fill him with focus. And then he waited, ready for the next step, ready to meet the question he could not yet answer. Outside the hall, the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, casting long, strange shadows over the Zarok village. The planet seemed alive, watching, waiting. And Captain Rian Holt, human envoy, felt the weight of expectation, not from enemies wielding knives, but from beings who wielded understanding itself. For the first time in his life, he realized that the greatest challenge might not come from outside, but from within. Captain Rian Holt sat on the hovering cushion, staring at the rippling water in front of him. The Zarok village lay beyond the crystal walls, glowing softly in the light of the twin suns. He could hear faint humming from the crystal towers outside, a sound that seemed almost alive. Yet despite the calm around him, a storm raged inside. The question Aelthar had asked kept returning to him. Why do humans fight when they have wisdom? Rian's mind spun. He had faced countless battles, yet this was nothing like those. On distant planets, his training had taught him to anticipate threats, to respond with speed and force. But here, speed and force were meaningless. Words and understanding were the weapons of choice, and he felt unarmed. Lieutenant Mira Chen, sitting beside him, noticed the tension in his face. "Captain, you okay?" she whispered. "You look lost." Rian shook his head slightly. "I'm not lost," he said softly. "I'm thinking. But it's different." It's not about strategy or tactics. It's about understanding. Mira tilted her head. Understanding what? The question, Rian said. Why humans fight when they have the ability to think, to reason? We survive through conflict, yes, but what if survival isn't just about fighting? The Zarek chief, Althar, watched silently. His silver eyes reflected patience, as if he were letting Rian wrestle with the answer himself. Around them, other members of the tribe observed from a distance, standing motionless yet attentive. Althar finally spoke, his voice calm and deliberate. Captain Holt, your species is remarkable. You have adapted to countless environments, survived against countless dangers, and yet you often choose to use strength first. Why is that? He thought of humanity's history, wars on Earth, colonization across the stars, moments of both cruelty and brilliance. He thought of humans who had fought to protect others, and humans who had fought out of fear or greed. I think, Rian began slowly, humans fight because we fear the unknown, because we protect what we love, and sometimes because we hope that our actions will create safety or justice. But it's not simple. Not all humans fight for the same reason. Some fight to survive. Some fight to protect. Some fight to understand what they cannot yet grasp. Althar inclined his head slightly, a gesture of approval. Your words are true, but incomplete. Fear and protection are understandable. Hope that is rarer. Yet, humans often confuse action with understanding. You move before you reflect. You strike before you ask. That is the choice of many, but not of all. Tell me, Captain, which do you choose? Rian felt the weight of the question. He looked at Mira, who met his gaze with steady confidence. Humans had always relied on adaptability, intelligence, and moral reasoning. Perhaps that was the answer. But how could he explain it simply, in words that would satisfy beings who measured thought differently? Before he could answer, one of the Zarok villagers approached, a tall figure with translucent skin that shimmered like the water. In their hands was a small object, glowing faintly. The villager placed it on the floor before Rian. This is a mirror, Althar said. It does not reflect your face. It reflects your choices, your instincts, your truths. Look, Captain, what do you see? At first, all he saw was his reflection, tired and tense. Then the image shifted. He saw moments from his life, standing over a battlefield, making life-and-death decisions, comforting allies, learning from mistakes, moments of kindness. Each scene glowed softly, connected by threads of light. He realized the mirror was showing him a truth he had long ignored. Humans fight, yes, but always with choice. Even in battle, we reflect. Even in fear, we hope. Even in weakness, we plan.
Mira leaned closer.
It's beautiful, she whispered. They're not showing us weakness or strength. They're showing us what humans are at our core. Rian nodded, feeling a strange warmth. We are fighters, he said softly. But we are thinkers too. And maybe that is why we survive when others would fall. Althar watched, his expression unreadable. You begin to understand, he said. But understanding is not enough. You must act according to understanding. Will you? Rian swallowed. I will try. Althar stood, gliding across the hall with effortless grace. Then you shall learn the next lesson. Observe. From the crystal walls, a series of shapes began to form. The water channels glowed, projecting scenes that seemed alive. Rian saw the history of the Zarok tribe, battles fought long ago, not for conquest but for survival. He saw moments where the tribe chose diplomacy over conflict, patience over aggression, understanding over instinct. This is our way, Althar said. Strength is not only measured by the hand that strikes. It is measured by the mind that judges, the heart that feels, and the courage to choose the path of thought. Rian felt a shiver run down his spine. Humanity often measured strength by the body, by weapons, by endurance. Yet here he saw a species that measured strength by intelligence, reflection, and moral clarity. And he realized for the first time that humans shared this trait, sometimes buried beneath survival instincts but always present. Mira looked at him, eyes wide. Captain, we could learn so much from them. Yes, Rian said quietly, and we must. Not to dominate, not to conquer, but to grow. If humans can survive, it is not only because of strength or weapons. It is because we think, we adapt, we care. Althar gestured toward the human team. You are visitors. Observe carefully. The smallest act of thought can change the outcome of a conflict. Watch, listen, reflect. Only then will you answer the question you cannot yet answer. Over the next hours, Ryan and his team moved among the Zarok village. They observed daily life, how the tribe worked with nature, how technology and environment coexisted. Every action had purpose, every decision carried weight. Humans often relied on tools and force. Zarok relied on thought, strategy, and harmony. Yet, paradoxically, Ryan noticed a similarity. Humans adapted to survive. Zarok adapted to thrive. Both species valued life, intelligence, and choice. The difference was subtle. Humans often fought before thinking. Zarok often thought before acting. Ryan watched a young Zarok apprentice guide a smaller child across a delicate crystal bridge. One misstep could shatter the bridge. The child hesitated, fear clear in their eyes. The apprentice spoke softly, guiding, encouraging, teaching patience. Ryan felt a pang of recognition. Humans did this too. Teachers, parents, leaders guiding the next generation through danger, through fear, through uncertainty. You see it, don't you? Mira whispered. They aren't just strong. They think. They feel. They teach. We do this too sometimes. Yes, Ryan said, and maybe that is the bridge between us. Not weapons, not strength. Understanding. As the suns dipped toward the horizon, the light shifted, painting the village in amber and gold. Ryan felt a strange peace. The fear that had gripped him at arrival had eased, replaced with curiosity and respect. But the question remained, why do humans fight when they have wisdom? Ryan knew the answer was not simple. It could not be a single phrase, a single sentence. It was action, reflection, choice, hope, fear, survival, morality, all intertwined. Humans were paradoxes, creatures of both destruction and creation, of conflict and compassion. Aelthar approached him again, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. Captain Holt, you begin to see. But seeing is not enough. You must live it. Tomorrow, you will face a test. A small choice, but one that will reveal whether humans can act with wisdom instead of instinct. Ryan nodded, feeling both anxiety and excitement. This was no battlefield of knives and lasers. This was a battlefield of thought, of morality, of understanding. And he felt ready to face it, not because he was the strongest, but because he had the courage to think, to reflect, and to choose. That night, Ryan could not sleep. He stared at the twin moons through the crystal walls, thinking of the day's lessons. Humans often survive through strength, through fight. But perhaps survival meant more than that. Perhaps survival meant reflection, choice, and the courage to act wisely. Mira slept beside him, her steady breathing a reminder of human resilience. Together they had survived countless dangers. Yet here, in the calm of the Zarok village, survival meant more than avoiding death. It meant understanding life. Captain Ryan Holt closed his eyes, and for the first time he felt the weight of wisdom pressing upon him. Not as a burden, but as a challenge. Tomorrow, he would act. Tomorrow, he would face the question he could not yet answer, and he would do so as a human thoughtful, curious, adaptable, and courageous. The next morning, Captain Ryan Holt awoke before the twin suns had fully risen. The light of Zarok Prime filtered softly through the crystal walls of the ceremonial hall where he had slept, bathing the room in shades of green and gold. He could hear the soft hum of the village outside, the pulse of the planet itself, and felt a strange mix of anticipation and tension. Today, Aelthar had said he would face a test. Not a test of strength, not a test of weapons, but a test of thought, understanding, and choice. Ryan rose quietly, careful not to wake Lieutenant Mira Chen, who slept beside him on a hovering cushion. He poured a small cup of water from the basin at the center of the hall. As he drank, he studied his reflection in the liquid. It was not just his face that stared back at him, but his mind, clear yet burdened, thoughtful yet anxious. The memory of Aelthar's question returned. Why do humans fight when they have wisdom? Today, he realized, he would begin to find an answer. Stepping into the courtyard, Ryan noticed the villagers moving with calm purpose. Unlike humans who often rush through their daily tasks, the Zarok performed each action with attention and care. Even the smallest gesture, pouring water into a basin, arranging stones along a pathway, was precise and meaningful. Every movement seemed intentional, as though it carried a lesson. Captain Holt, Aelthar's voice echoed from the center of the courtyard. The chief stood tall, robes shifting in the soft morning light, his silver eyes reflecting patience and intelligence. "Today you will walk among us, observe, act, make choices. Your first challenge is simple but revealing. You will follow the young apprentice, Zevrin, as he learns to cross the glass bridge. Step lightly, speak wisely, and guide without dominance. Do this, and you may see what humans truly offer the galaxy." Ryan felt a knot of tension tighten in his chest. A bridge? Across glass? And this was a test? He quickly realized that the danger was not physical but mental. This was about calm, judgment, and empathy. Qualities humans often took for granted in battle, but that now defined survival. "Yes, Chief," he said, bowing slightly. His voice was firm despite the uncertainty twisting in his stomach. The glass bridge stretched across a deep chasm, shimmering like liquid crystal under the morning suns. Rian could see the faint currents of energy running through the surface, a Zarok technology that allowed the bridge to remain stable, but only if the traveler moved with attention and care. Any misstep could trigger an alarm, or worse, collapse a section of the bridge. Zevrin, a young Zarok apprentice, stood at the bridge's edge, hesitant. His translucent skin reflected worry, and his small hands gripped the side rail. He glanced at Rian nervously. You will guide me?" Zevrin asked, voice trembling. "I do not want to fail." Rian knelt slightly to meet the apprentice's gaze. "You won't fail," he said gently. "I'll walk with you. Focus on each step, breathe, think about what comes next, not what might happen. Trust yourself, and trust the bridge." The boy nodded, and they began to step carefully under the shimmering surface. Rian kept his pace slow, deliberate. With each footfall, he reminded Zevrin to observe the ripples in the bridge, the faint glow that indicated stability. Humans often rushed through danger, relying on strength and speed to carry them. But here, Ryan relied on observation, guidance, and patience. He realized that these were human qualities as well: adaptability, intelligence, and empathy. Humans survived not just by fighting, but by thinking, teaching, and protecting. Halfway across, a section of the bridge trembled beneath them. Zevrin froze, eyes wide with fear. "Step lightly," Ryan whispered. "Look at the glow. Let it guide your movement. You are stronger than your fear." The apprentice took a deep breath and continued, slowly and carefully, until they reached solid ground. Elthar stood at the far end, observing, his expression unreadable. When they stepped onto safety, the chief nodded slightly. "Captain Holt," Elthar said, "observe. This is the moment where humans excel. You do not dominate with force. You guide with thought. You do not conquer fear. You teach courage. This is your strength." Rian felt a rush of pride, not for himself, but for humanity. The HFY truth hit him. Humans were not always the strongest physically, but their intelligence, adaptability, and capacity to empathize allowed them to survive in hostile worlds. Strength of mind could rival strength of body. The day continued with more lessons. Rian followed the apprentice through the village, learning about Zarok technology and culture. He saw machines integrated with crystal, not dominating nature but cooperating with it. Plants were grown in patterns that enhanced energy flow. Water was not simply consumed, it was shared, purified and guided to nourish both people and land. Humans often relied on tools to dominate environments, he realized, but the Zarok relied on understanding, observation, and planning. And yet, humans had a unique gift, curiosity combined with resilience. Even when faced with the unknown, humans did not stop. They learned, adapted, and invented. At midday, Elthar summoned him again. "Captain," he said, "you have guided, observed, and reflected. Now comes the test of courage and wisdom. There is a task you may not expect. You must negotiate passage through the crystal forest to reach the summit. The path is open, but not all who enter return the same. You will meet obstacles, yes, but the true challenge is your decision, to act with haste and fear, or with thought and caution. What will you choose?" Rian nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. He gathered his team and moved into the forest. The trees were towering crystal formations, refracting sunlight in dazzling colors. The ground beneath them was smooth but uneven, and strange, luminous plants grew along the edges. The forest seemed alive, watching their movements. Suddenly, a section of the path split into two. One route was direct but unstable, glittering dangerously with sharp edges. The other was longer but safe, lined with soft light guiding the travelers. The human instinct screamed to take the direct path, faster, more efficient, less time exposed. But Rian remembered Elthar's lessons. Strength lies in thought, not speed.
This path is dangerous, he said.
We could rush and risk injury, or we can take the safer route and arrive wiser. What do you choose? Mira glanced at him, then at the two paths. Safer route, she said. We survive because we think. Rian smiled. Then we move carefully and together. Step by step, they advanced along the glowing path. Obstacles appeared, loose crystals, strange energy currents, but they navigated each with observation, discussion, and careful planning. Zevran followed them, learning not just the forest's path, but the way humans combined intelligence with courage. Finally, they reached a clearing at the summit. From there, the entire Xerox Valley lay spread before them, crystal towers glowing in the afternoon sun. Rian felt awe and humility. Humans often conquered worlds with weapons. Today he realized humans could also conquer understanding, patience, and wisdom. Aelthar appeared beside him, smiling faintly. You have acted wisely, he said. You guided, reflected, and chose patience over impulse. That is a rare quality among all species. Humans are not only survivors, they are thinkers, teachers, and protectors. Your people are fragile in body but strong in mind. That is why you endure, Captain Holt. That is why you have survived across worlds. Rian felt a surge of pride. He had expected a battlefield of knives and violence, but instead he found a battlefield of thought, and he had prevailed, not through strength, not through weapons, but through wisdom. Zevran approached, eyes wide with admiration. Captain, you did not force me. You guided me. You taught me without harshness. I understand now. Yes, Rian said, placing a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. That is the way humans survive. We fight when we must, yes, but we guide, teach, and think first. That is our true strength. The chief nodded approvingly. And now, you begin to answer your question. Humans fight because you must. But humans endure because you choose, reflect, and act with wisdom. That is your gift, and that is your power. As the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, Rian looked over the valley. Humans were not the strongest species he had ever faced, but they were adaptable, intelligent, and capable of understanding beyond instinct. And in that moment, he realized something profound. Humans could survive anywhere, not because of weapons, not because of brute strength, but because of thought, courage, and compassion. Rian turned to Mira. We have much to learn, he said softly. Not about fighting, but about being human. And we start here, with understanding. For the first time on Xerox Prime, Rian felt confident. Not because he had defeated an enemy, but because he had discovered the true power of humanity, and he knew that tomorrow, whatever challenge awaited, he would face it not just as a soldier, but as a human capable of thought. The dawn on Xerox Prime was quiet, almost sacred. Captain Rian Holt stood at the edge of the ceremonial hall, the crystal floor beneath him glowing softly in the morning light. He had spent the night thinking, reflecting on the lessons of the previous days, on the mirrors that showed truths, the bridge that demanded patience, and the forest that tested judgment. Today, Aelthar had promised, would be the final step. Not a battle, but a choice that would reveal whether humans could act with wisdom instead of instinct. Rian glanced at Lieutenant Mira Chen, who stood beside him with a calm expression. Are you ready? She asked softly. I think so, Rian replied, taking a deep breath. But ready or not, this is the moment. Althar appeared in the hall, robes shifting with the soft light. His silver eyes met Rian's. Captain Holt, you have observed, reflected, and acted with care. Today you will answer the question you could not before. You will choose the path for your people, and in doing so, you will show what it means to be human. Rian nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon him. This was no longer about survival or strategy. This was about humanity itself, the courage to act wisely, to reflect, to guide others, and to choose compassion over conflict. The challenge lay before them in the courtyard. A group of Xerox villagers had gathered, forming a circle. At the center was a small, delicate device, a glowing crystal orb hovering above a pedestal. Aelthar explained its purpose. This orb represents a colony on a distant planet, he said. It faces a threat, real and immediate. You have the knowledge to intervene, but you must choose. Act hastily, with force and speed, or act carefully, with wisdom and guidance. The outcome rests on your decision. What will you do? Rian studied the orb. Images flashed inside it. Cities, forests, rivers, people struggling against a sudden danger. He could see the potential for disaster if they acted incorrectly. Humans often acted first and thought later. The temptation to strike immediately was strong. But he remembered Elthar's lessons, the bridge, the forest, the apprentice, and realized that wisdom must guide action. "Team," he said quietly, "we are not here to attack. We are here to understand, to guide, and to protect. Observe first, act second." Mira nodded. "Understood, Captain." "Let's do this carefully." Rian reached out, touching the orb lightly. Instantly, the vision expanded, showing more details, the colony's defenses, the layout of its energy systems, and the lives of the people within.
He felt the weight of responsibility. One wrong choice could destroy lives.
He turned to Aelthar. "We must act wisely, not quickly."
"We need to study the situation, communicate with the colony, and guide them step by step. Force alone cannot save them." Elthar's expression was calm but approving, and that, Captain, is your answer. Humans fight, yes, because you must survive. But you endure, because you reflect, you guide, and you act with thought. Strength of mind can save more than strength of arm. Rian worked with his team, using the orb to simulate various strategies. They discussed, observed, and made careful decisions guiding the colony's defenses and evacuation procedures. The Zarok watched silently, studying how humans combine intelligence, empathy, and moral reasoning. Hours passed. Finally, the simulation concluded. The colony was safe, disaster averted. The orb glowed softly, signaling success. Rian exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and pride. Elthar stepped forward. "Captain Holt, your actions today demonstrate what humans truly offer the galaxy. Not just strength, not just resilience, but wisdom. You protect, you guide, and you think. That is why your species survives even among the unknown and the dangerous. That is your gift and your power." Ryan felt a surge of emotion. All his training, all his experiences had prepared him for combat, but it was thought, reflection, and compassion that defined his true strength. He realized that humans were not merely survivors because of muscle or weapons. They survived because of choice, courage, and understanding. Zevran, the young apprentice, approached again. "Captain, I understand now. You acted with care, patience, and wisdom. Not with force, not with fear. You showed me the way humans survive, even in worlds more dangerous than mine." Rian placed a hand on Zevran's shoulder. "It's not about being stronger," he said. "It's about thinking, guiding, and choosing what is right. That is how humans endure." The rest of the day was spent in celebration. The villagers shared food and stories, and the humans observed, learning more about the Zarok way of life. Rian realized that humans often conquered through conflict, but they could also thrive through understanding. At sunset, Aelthar gathered the humans for one final moment. "Captain Holt, you now have your answer. Humans fight because survival demands it. But humans endure, because you are thinkers, teachers, and protectors. Your people will face challenges far greater than weapons alone can overcome. Remember this. Reflection, empathy, and courage are your true tools. Your wisdom is your strength." Ryan nodded, feeling a deep sense of clarity. "I understand, Chief. We fight to survive, but we endure and grow through wisdom." Aelthar smiled faintly. "Good. And now, Captain, you may return to your ship. Take this understanding with you and let it guide your people. Humanity has the potential to change worlds, not just through force, but through thought and action." Before leaving, the chief presented Rian with a small crystal, glowing softly with inner light. "A gift," Aelthar said. "Not a weapon, but a symbol of trust. Use it wisely. It represents the future you can protect, not by fighting, but by guiding and thinking." Rian accepted it humbly. "Thank you, Chief. We will honor it." As the humans boarded their shuttle, Rian took one last look at the Zarok village. The crystal towers glimmered in the evening light, the rivers flowed peacefully, and the villagers watched silently, their expressions calm and knowing. He felt awe and respect, not for their strength, but for their wisdom and understanding. The engines hummed, lifting the shuttle into the sky. The twin suns bathed Zarok Prime in soft light, casting long shadows over the crystal landscape. Rian thought of the journey ahead, of the many worlds humans would encounter. He realized that humans were fragile in body yet strong in mind. They could survive not because of brute force, but because they could think, reflect, and choose. Mira glanced at him. Captain, do you think we're ready for what's out there? Rian smiled. We always have been, he said. Not because we fight the strongest, but because we think, adapt, and care. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us strong. The shuttle moved smoothly through the atmosphere, leaving Xerox Prime behind. Rian's mind was alive with reflection. The chief's question, once impossible to answer, now had clarity. Humans fight, yes, but humans endure, because they think, they guide, they choose, and they hope. The galaxy was full of danger, full of unknowns, full of challenges that would test courage, strength, and intelligence. But Rian felt ready, not because he had the sharpest weapons, or the fastest reflexes, or the toughest armor, but because he carried the human gift, the power to reflect, to act wisely, and to survive through understanding. He looked at the stars stretching before them, infinite and mysterious. Humanity had survived countless worlds. Humanity would endure countless more. And for the first time, Captain Rian Holt felt that the greatest battles were not always fought with weapons, but with thought, courage, and wisdom. In that moment, he understood the answer to the question he could not answer at the beginning. Humans are not only fighters, they are thinkers, guides, and protectors. And that was a power no weapon could match. As Xerox Prime shrank behind them, glowing softly in the distance, Rian felt a deep sense of purpose. He had not only survived the test, he had discovered something far more important, the truth of humanity, and the strength it carried into every corner of the galaxy. The shuttle climbed higher, carrying the humans toward their next mission, their next challenge, their next opportunity to act not just with strength, but with wisdom and courage. And somewhere in the vastness of the stars, Captain Rian Holt knew that humans would continue to endure, to adapt, and to shine, not because of what they fought against, but because of what they chose to protect, guide, and understand.